What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Doctor Who classic review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the first Doctor William Hartnell story, The Space Museum. This is an interesting one. It's a story that doesn't really get talked about at all. So it's not really regarded as a really good story. It's not regarded as a really bad story either. It's one of those stories that just kind of gets forgotten about and not talked about because it's just kind of regarded as kind of your run-of-the-mill okay sort of, I guess, filler, I suppose you'd call it these days, sort of story. So I was interested to see what the Space Museum would have to offer, and it's kind of a story to set up the chase, which is the next big Dalek story, the third Dalek story in Doctor Who's history. So it's more of a setup for that than anything else. But yeah, I was interested to see what this one would be like. Anyway, this is The Space Museum by Glyn Jones. The TARDIS lands on the planet Zeros, where a vast museum houses a collection of relics from the galactic conquest of the mighty Morok Empire. Whilst they are exploring, the Doctor and his companions make a disturbing discovery. Their future selves are preserved in the museum as exhibits in a display case. Now the time travellers face a terrible dilemma. How can they escape their fate when every decision they make could be taking them a step closer to their doom? So it's actually quite an interesting little thing on the back there. The story basically for the first part is just kind of walking around this museum and seeing what's going on, trying to hide from people and that, because they've kind of just walked in. And then after the cliffhanger for part one is basically that they find themselves inside these chambers, and for the rest of the story it's kind of them trying to stop them from getting to that fate. But I like the idea of, they're trying to stop themselves from getting to that point, but the things they're doing might be leading them towards that fate, even though they don't think it is. So it's actually quite an interesting little concept that is done fairly well here. But anyway, before we get into all that sort of stuff, let's start off with the cast. William Hartnell as the first Doctor. I do quite like William Hartnell in this. Definitely he has his moments for sure. He's actually absent for a little bit of this story. I mean, there's kind of a spot, it's part 2 and 3-ish, where he gets kind of kidnapped and he's not really that prominent for a lot of it. There's like a whole episode where he's pretty much not present. I'm not sure if it's episode 2 or 3. Yeah, there's a long time where he's not really there. We just kind of see glimpses of him now and again. I do like though how he's like when he's getting questioned and he's playing with the machine. I do quite like that, and I think William Hartnell he just acts a bit more kind of funny and a little bit comedic and a little bit silly, which is interesting because a lot of the stuff before this, especially in season 1, remember this is season 2, William Hartnell was a much more grumpy kind of very stern Doctor. Well, we see some more funny, silly moments here. I think these are some of his earlier funny, silly moments, and I do quite like that. Jacqueline Hill as Barbara Wright. Yeah, she's good. Once again, I'm going to be honest, this isn't really a particularly standout story for any of the companions. Maybe one companion, which we'll get to, but I'd say the majority of the characters in general in this don't get a whole lot of kind of amazing stuff to do. So yeah, Jacqueline Hill, she's great as Barbara, no doubt about it. Same goes for William Russell as Ian Chesterton. He's very, very good. I've said a lot that I do quite like Ian, and I do still like Ian, definitely. I think in this story, he doesn't do as much. I mean, he definitely does have stuff to do, and he does really well with the stuff that he's doing. But yeah, Ian's not, a massive focus of the story. I'd say in a lot of ways, the main companion focus in this story is probably Maureen O'Brien as Vicky. She gets a lot more to do in this story. She ends up going with the, what are the people that aren't the Moroks, the other people. I think I've got it written down here somewhere. What are they called? Nope, maybe I don't have it on here. I can't see it right now anyway. But, she's with the people that aren't the Moroks, the people that, the Zeros people that live on Zeros. She kind of goes with them for a bit and has a lot of stuff to do there on her own. So I quite like that. It gives her a lot more to do. So I think the standout companion of this one for me is definitely Vicky. However, the others are very, very good as well. Alright, so on to the good and the bad, starting off with the good. Working out that the Doctor and his friends are outside of their bodies. I really do like the end of part 1. It's a really interesting thing. I found part 1 on the whole a little bit slow. They were kind of building up stuff, but I felt it a little bit slow. However, once we did get to the realization of what was going on, or at least an idea of what was going on, The kind of build up and the slowness of part 1 did wear off me a bit. I thought, okay, it makes sense, it was kind of worth it. I love how they find themselves in these, like, basically clear glass containers, just standing there completely lifeless, and they're wondering what's going on, and they realize, oh, we haven't been seen this whole time by the people, which is weird. We haven't been able to touch anything, we just go straight through. It turns out that they're actually kind of having out-of-body experiences, and they're kind of seeing what's going to happen in the future. So now, once kind of time fixes itself or goes all weird, the versions of them in the containers disappear, and now it's kind of playing up to that point again with them, so they now become real, and they have to kind of change their fate, which I think is really interesting. It's a really interesting thing to do, and yeah, on the whole, it is done pretty well, actually. I do quite enjoy that aspect of this story. Everyone trying to think which way to go to get back to the TARDIS. I thought that was really interesting. So when they were looking through the museum, they were just kind of going through any door and any corridor and walking all over the place. And then when they figure out what's going on, they have to try and find their way back to the TARDIS, and they have no idea which way to go. The Doctor says, oh, I reckon we'll go this way, turn left. Ian's like, nope, go this way, turn right. Vicky's saying another way. Barbara's saying another way. It's a really funny moment. There is a few comedic moments in this story for sure. And yeah, I mean, I did hear actually a lot of this is a very comedic story. I wouldn't say it's a very comedic story. It has its moments of comedy, especially for this era, for the William Hartnell era. It has its moments of comedy. I wouldn't really call it a solely comedic story though, really. Yeah, it definitely has its moments, and that is one of them. Another comedic moment, the Doctor hiding inside the Dalek. This is a shot that I've seen. It's a scene that I've seen quite a few times without actually seeing the episode. Yeah, where the Doctor like emerges out of the top of a Dalek, laughing crazily like a crazy scientist. That's a pretty funny moment. He's hiding from the Morlocks. I think he's hiding from the Morlocks. And yep, he emerges out of the Dalek, which is pretty funny. That's a nice little scene there. And then Vicky changing the machine to only accept the truth, not also the correct answer. So I found that quite interesting. This machine, to get into the armory, you needed to tell the truth, but it had to be the correct answer, which I think is an interesting thing. But she managed to rewire it so that it didn't have to have the correct answer. You just had to tell the truth of what you were doing and what you were saying. Now, I liked this. Is Vicky known to be a very technical person? I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I'm fairly sure when she was, on the rescue, her first appearance, she was on that ship. She was doing some technical stuff there, so I can kind of be like, okay, maybe she's quite technically minded. Obviously, I don't know the full backstory of her or anything, because I haven't seen all her stories, and it's been a while since I've seen the rescue, so it's a bit kind of for that. But the thing I did find a bit weird was that, there was all these different questions that she had to answer originally. But then when she rewires it, she only has to answer 2 questions. I think she has to answer what her name is, and I can't remember what the other one is. Why? It's like why they want to get into the armory or something like that. So she only answers 2 questions. So if she was able to, I mean, they were probably just cutting it down for time's sake, not having to go through all the questions again. But yeah, it doesn't really work because we see the whole scene. That's the only 2 questions she answers, whereas before she had like 10 questions coming up. So it feels like she managed to manipulate the machine in a way so that she only had to tell the truth, and she managed to shorten the questions down. Well, if that was the case, why not just change it down to 1 question? What's your name? Vicky. Okay, you're in. I found that a bit strange, but yeah, I suppose it's a little bit of a nitpick. So on to the bad now. We're actually talking about the bad now. That wasn't really a bad thing. That was just a bit of a nitpick within the good stuff. So start off with, the guard just lets Ian, Barbara and Vicky talk to each other. Now this is very strange. After the Doctor gets kidnapped, Ian, Barbara and Vicky get caught by a guard. The guard is holding them at gunpoint at the door and just lets them talk to each other for about a whole minute and a half. And then after they stop talking, says, oh, you guys should stop talking now. They've already stopped talking. They've had a full conversation about what they're going to do. They don't look suspicious at all. I mean, nah, not at all. I just found that really kind of silly. Surely the guard would have broke them up or something. Just letting them talk for like a whole minute and a half, suspiciously as hell, is just a bit strange. Pretty unexciting cliffhangers. Apart from the first part, I thought the first part's cliffhanger was decent. However, the cliffhangers after that were pretty bland, I thought, just not really the most exciting of cliffhangers. And then finally, very quick ending by the Zeros people just killing all the Morlocks. They just kind of kill them all with all the weapons that they got. And that's it. it's a bit quick for a story that was relatively slowly paced. It did end a bit quickly for me, and just kind of suddenly. That's actually a thing I've seen with a lot of episodes I've watched recently. They've all been a bit quick to end, and yeah, this one was definitely one of those stories. So what am I going to give the Space Museum for a rating out of 10? I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a good story. It's enjoyable, it's only 4 parts long, and although it is a little bit slow paced, it still goes past relatively quickly. It's relatively interesting throughout the whole thing, with a few little hiccups here and there, and pacing issues, but it is one that I can see myself watching again and still enjoying. Like I said, I haven't seen The Chase yet, which is the follow-up story to this. There is a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of this one, which is a good cliffhanger, of the Daleks, cliffhanging? Sure, into The Chase. So I'm interested to see how The Chase is. I've heard not great things about that as well, to be honest, but yeah, I'm interested to see what it would be like. But yeah, there's definitely some interesting stuff here, and I definitely like the concept behind it. I think the execution could have been done a bit better, but it's still enjoyable. So yeah, a 7 out of 10 for the Space Museum. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe. Go down to the description, follow me on Twitter, that would be awesome. And I'll see you guys in the next video.